guess I'm here to talk about what is permaculture landscape design. It's a multitude of things, but in general, the base definition that I use out of my notes from class is permaculture is the design and implementation of land use systems that work with nature and existing natural environment, creating a self-regenerating, low-maintenance food and medicine source that is both sustainable and usable. It is the opposite of monoculture. It was started in Australia in the 1970s by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, and they were environmentalists, and they were looking at the way we were using land to generate food, and they realized back then that it was unsustainable. There's a finite resource point. And looking back historically, the more biodiverse the ecosystem, the more food and medicine that there is, the more life it is able to support. So that was where it started. And where it is today, it is spread worldwide. It is a global movement. The United States, of course, is the last to get on board because of how easy it is to do. The first year is the hardest year. Your second year is half as hard as your first year. Your third year is half as hard as your second year. And by year 5, all you do is you go out and you harvest and maybe move a few plants around because it takes care of itself and sustains itself. You don't have to touch it. And to use an example, if all the grass looking out the windows here, if all of that was to be permaculture landscaped, that would provide enough food for every student on the university campus for a year. Wow. If 50% of the campus was permacultured, it would provide enough food for not only the campus, but the surrounding neighborhood for an entire year. So
is that the no-till kind of
that's part
way?
That's part of it.
Okay.
That's one of the subsystems of permaculture. Permaculture is an umbrella. Mm-hmm. It covers no-till, it covers hugelculture, it covers aquaculture, agroforestry, everything. Spiral gardens, land reclamation, where they've done drainage of swamps to turn it into farmland. Permaculturalists have come back in and reflooded the swamps and reintroduced native habitat species plants that are either medicinal, edible, or usable for the bugs to keep them away, to feed other animals so they're not eating the food source, or to implement soil and fix soil. So as permaculturalists, moving on real quick, and we'll do a questions and answer when I'm done. As permaculturalists, we have design principles that I'm still working on memorizing. And David Holmgren, one of the founders, has 12 that he uses, and these are 6 that stand out the most. And the design principles is when the designer goes into the landscape, they look at everything around. For example, if somebody was to come in here, they would not only look at the land, but they would look at all the pavers, and they would look at all the vertical wall space and all the flat roofs, space. All of that would be implemented in the design. But so 6 of them here. Observe and interact. By taking time to engage with nature, we can design solutions that suit our particular situation. Catch and store energy. By developing systems that collect resources when they are abundant, we can use them in times of need. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback. We need to discourage inappropriate activity to ensure that systems can continue to function well. Produce no waste. It's pretty self-explanatory. By By valuing and making use of all the resources that are available to us, nothing goes to waste. And in permaculture design, that means absolutely nothing. All your black water, all your gray water, it's all utilized in a permaculture design system. Integrate rather than segregate. By putting the right things in the right place, relationships develop between those things and they work to support each other. Use value and diversity. Use and value diversity. Diversity reduces vulnerability to a variety of threats and takes advantage of the unique nature of the environment in which it resides. And that's just 12. Dave Mullison, he's got 34, and my teacher Michael Pilarski's got 18. And so each design principle is important. David Holmgren's is pretty straightforward and functional. David Mollison's Bill Mollison's is, they're more Zen statements. You know, it's like for example, relative location. That's his design principle, number 1. Relative location. Components placed in the system are viewed relatively, not in isolation. You know, but you can actually meditate on each of them as a Zen phrase. And then Skeeter's are more esoteric. So between the three of them, you get a practical, you get a philosophical, and you get a spiritual point of view as far as design. In designing, we work with zones and sectors. Zones are relative to a central point of origin, i.e. if you're designing around a house, zone 0 is the house, zone 1 is within 30 seconds walking distance from the house, zone 2 is within 3 minutes walking distance of the house, and it's all relative to distance from the house. The purpose of the zones is when doing a design, all of your high maintenance stuff and all of your high use stuff you plant close to your structure. And all of your low maintenance stuff, things that you're only going to harvest once a year, areas that you're only going to visit, you know, periodically throughout the season, those are in your zone 3, 4, and 5 areas. Actually, zone 5 is wilderness, and there's design implementations where you go out into the existing wilderness, you see what's already there that's edible, and you enhance its environment to cause maximum production on its own. So, and then sectors, that's dealing with sun, shadow, wind, the movement of shadow over a period of time across the ground as it goes throughout the seasons. And that is where the design matrix comes in. That's where you figure out what plants are going to be planted where. Is based off of what zone it is and how the sectors of that particular zone interact in the region. And then you can terraform, or as we like to say, permaform. You can make sun traps. You can build a cob wall that's in an arc that's south-facing, and it traps all the sunlight heat, even in the wintertime, and it completely changes the microclimate right within the area. And you can manipulate the microenvironment with a permaculture design just using natural things like rocks, so much so through zones and sectors. One of the master designers and builders, an Austrian by the name of Sepp Holzer, at 5,000 feet in the Austrian Alps, is growing 5 different varieties of oranges, 4 different varieties of lemons, 3 different varieties of grapefruit, cherry trees, You know, in the wintertime, they're under 8 feet of snow. And in the summertime, their fruit is just heavily laden on the trees. And all he uses are rocks as big as this table. And he has 3 of them placed around the trunk of the tree. The rock itself collects the solar thermal mass. Even through the snow, it transfers the energy down to the ground, and the roots never freeze.
It's pretty awesome.
Amazing.
That's like what his design kind of is related to, right?
Yeah.
Your design.
One of the lower design on the thing is I came up with a 4x4 hole that's 2.5 feet deep, and it's layered. The very bottom sand, and then it's layered with aggregate. And at the top you have stone pavers, but punched into the very center of the mass are 2 stone uprights that form the pillars for a bench, and then there's the stone plate underneath. And in the wintertime, it captures the sun energy, transfers it below the ground, and stores it, and of course warms the ground below, keeps the roots warm. It also doubles as a water storage, where it slowly bleeds water into the surrounding environment. And during the summertime, when the plants are in full foliage, the stone is actually cool. So somebody can, on a hot day, can go sit in the bushes and sit on a cool stone bench. And,
That's awesome.
you know, and then with the zones and sectors, the next part of the design that we work with is guilds. And there's the ecology definition, which my notes were same organisms that fill the same function. And there's the permaculture definition. And that is a group of organisms and or plants that live together in a symbiotic relationship. 3 kinds of guilds exist in the permaculture design world. There's the accidental, the natural, and the planned. Okay. An example of an accidental guild is a weed truck is driving down the road, tips over, dumps a load of weed into the drainage ditch. The next year the weed sprouts, grows up, you have a weed patch. And in that weed patch you have mice and snakes and birds, and the mice bring in, say, clover seed and seed the ground with clover. And over a period of like 5 years, you have an accidental guild. So, natural guilds are guilds that exist in the natural environment. They evolve on their own time. As a okay mushroom hunter, I rely on being able to identify plant guilds to look for specific species of mushrooms, because specific species of mushrooms have a symbiotic relationship with specific species of plants. And so that's another example of a naturally occurring guild. And then, of course, planned, where you chop down trees and till up the ground and move a bunch of earth around and put in a bunch of stuff on your own. So, and the final thing is the social and environmental impacts of permaculture, which is the most important aspect of the design process, is the way of thinking and keeping in mind what this overall design is going to do to the social environment around it. Because once a design is implemented, unless somebody comes in and rips it out and rips out all the plants, it'll take care of itself. I mean, the human species could be wiped off the face of the planet, the design will still function and take care of itself. It doesn't need us. So the social environmental impacts is, well, environmentally, number one is carbon capture. You know, the larger your biomass, and when we design, we start off with trees and then we work all the way down to sub-ground, where we're working with mycology stuff. You know, what mushroom species are we going to put below ground to enhance the soil and enhance nutrient uptake into the plants, be food for various microbes